All right, let me know when you guys can hear me to make sure it's all working properly. I think it's funny how often, if I'm even just 5 minutes late, people just spam what the hell's going on. Most live streams start about 10 minutes after their schedule. I don't know if you follow any other YouTubers, guys. Okay, you hear me fine. All right. So yeah, this is the end of month live stream. I do it every month. The last one was actually just a little over 2 weeks ago, but that's because of how just exhausted I was from all of the Zen, the 5 nanometer, and the Ampere leaks, of course. So yeah, I mean, I want to go back to doing it at the end of every month, and this Sunday seemed pretty slow, and let's do it now. For those who've never watched one of these before, I first go through some loose ends, some recent events, and then reader mails that have been written to me ahead of time by the patrons. If you're a patron, you can submit free questions. And then I get into just a live, direct Q&A with all of you, where if you tip, I'll answer your question for sure. If you don't, I'll just get to whoever I can. And I guess, yeah, that's basically all you need to know. Basically, though, if you want to tip me, don't do it right now. Wait for me to get to the end of that. Actually, before I start, and I did just get back from hiking, so that's why, my hair looks ridiculous. I'm going to turn that fan. I'm going to turn this back on because it's hot in here. Ugh. Let me know if the fan starts annoying you guys on the mic, but it's just too hot. Okay. Anyways. A lot has happened this month for the channel. I mean, May has been, probably the biggest month in the channel's history. I mean, it's all relative because, what matters more, total number of subscribers or percentage growth. But I think May and April will probably go down as the biggest months for a while for this channel. And a big part of that was just dozens, almost, maybe literally, of AMD APUs being leaked, both by me and other people. And I gotta say that I think that Van Gogh Cezanne pincer attack should have probably been 2 or 3 separate videos. And moving forward, I'm going to take a bit of a step back from covering all of these APU leaks in as much detail because, frankly, there's just too many of them. There's just too many APUs being leaked right now. And it's to the point where I actually think some of them may be fake. Like AMD might be intentionally putting out BS leaks, right? Like, because think about 3 specific leaks, right? We already knew Zen 3 should be coming at the end of the year. And then this giant 5 nanometer rumor comes out. Then the same day, 7 nanometer Warhol Zen 3. So what the hell's true? They're not switching to 5 nanometer and then also having 7 nanometer Warhol come out after. Or if they do, there's just way more to the story that we don't know. I legitimately think AMD may be putting out fake leaks themselves to flush out leakers and people leaking from their company. But I'm not entirely sure. And I mean, just when it comes to Renoir, I know they were testing 12 compute unit versions, 10 compute unit, I think even maybe 16 compute unit. I know there were 2 versions of that APU I detailed in my original Cezanne leak in February. There's tons of versions of even different architectures of APUs. Not all of these are going to come out, and it's just getting too confusing for me to even keep up with all of them. So we'll see. Maybe it'll turn out that I still end up covering tons of APUs every week, but I am honestly I'm honestly getting tired of covering all of these code names a little bit, and I think you guys clearly are a little bit too. Anyways, let us move on to the reader mails. And I've actually organized these into different groups of questions. The first group is all about Ryzen 4000 laptops. So let me write down that timestamp. Let's see. All right. So James Crosto writes in and he says, do you have any inside knowledge on whether the current lack of Ryzen 4000 laptops other than Asus is solely due to human malware or COVID-19 delays? Or were the partners slow in coming up with designs? We were supposed to have the Lenovos in early April, and they still haven't launched. I don't know of many others than the Asus Lenovo even listing their SKUs. it's going to be a combination of several things. Could it be related to like COVID, supply chain delays, disruptions? Probably is. I mean, I think anything you're seeing now, when you go to the supermarket, it just turns out I can't get chicken thighs today. Oh, well, and if just like one component of those laptops is not there, then they can't make that laptop when they said they were trying to. Additionally, I think it's painfully obvious that Intel is pushing a ton of pressure and just giving away their 14 nanometer laptop CPUs, even though they seem like absolute garbage, if you ask me. Most of them, maybe not all of them completely, but at this point, it's kind of a joke compared to Renoir. So I think it's both. And I think you're going to see plenty of Renoir laptops, coming. I got to say, though, here's the thing, and this is something consistently stated by people I've interviewed on Broken Silicon. AMD's supply chain distribution organization is just, they're a smaller company than Intel. They may have a global launch, but they're just never going to be able, well, I shouldn't say never, I guess, but for the time being, they're just not going to be able to do as much of a concerted uniform launch that Intel is, because they just don't have the capabilities, right? They don't have the capabilities. So I wouldn't underestimate how much of it is just that. And you see this all the time with various product launches where they're just not out in as uniform way as you think, but they're there. They're not. I've seen people freaking out about it. And I understand it's frustrating if you've been waiting for a great laptop, and Renoir is definitely just a game changer in CPU performance in a laptop, and you're frustrated. But I mean, you can't just say it's a paper launch and curse out AMD. It's like they're making them as they can. There's a lot that goes into, right? If you put a Comet Lake CPU into what was previously a Whiskey Lake laptop, they'll just slot right in. But these Renoir laptops require entirely different components that aren't just the CPU, right? There's a lot more work that has to go into launching this. That allows for more room for disruption. But that's all I have to really say about that. And then Clean Sweep writes in, and he says, what are your thoughts on the AMD 4000H laptops? They're good, in a word, that are starting to roll out. Acer Nitro 5, Dell G515, Asus TUF. Seems like pricing is all over the place, especially with the wild disparity in terms of dedicated GPUs, RAM, and SSD capacities in each other. I really like this question. So, right, I think you're just going to see wild Renoir price disparities until 2021 for the fact that a lot of OEMs, and I think to a certain extent AMD, doesn't know what to do with Renoir. Again, Renoir is 150 millimeters squared. It's like 30% smaller than Picasso was. And you can say, oh, 7 nanometers more expensive. I mean, yes, right now, 7 nanometers more expensive than 12 or 14 nanometer. But 3 years ago, 14 nanometer was not that much cheaper than where 7 nanometer is now, relatively speaking. Renoir is dirt cheap. And they thought Tiger Lake might be out by now with better graphics, which we know it will, better graphics. But so what do you do with Renoir? It's a budget chip that really is cheap to manufacture. It's really cheap. It is. I promise you. Renoir is dirt cheap to make. But then on the one hand, it blows the competition away. Intel can't compete with it at all. It takes Intel's top 90-watt 8-core laptop CPU to compete with AMD's budget 8-core that uses 35 watts. What do you do about that? I don't know. So you're going to see OEM pricing all over the place, because if it's a top gaming laptop, it has AMD, end of story. If it has Intel, it's not a top gaming laptop, because Intel's shit right now. So I just don't want to hear it. But then again, it also costs not a lot. So you're going to see some Renoir laptops that are $500. Until Tiger Lake comes out, you're going to see them not know what to do, because it has no competition and yet it's cheap. And then at the same time, when it comes to like the variances in RAM, SSD, dedicated graphics cards, that's kind of typical. I don't know if it's worse with Renoir. I haven't paid that much attention, but I mean, like my laptop with an MX, it's over a year old now. It has like a IGZO IPS gorgeous 4K display that's touchscreen. It has an MX250, a quad core that boosts to 4.9 gigahertz, which was a big deal, over a year ago before Renoir came out. It had an NVMe drive that was blazing fast, over 2 gigabytes per second, 16 gigabytes of DDR4. I mean, it had a lot of, I think it was even like splash proof from water. and that thing was like $1,100, and you'd see competing laptops, and you could sometimes find similar models from HP that were manufacturer certified refurbished with a 90-day warranty for like $800. Then you had competing laptops that were bigger, worse battery life, worse screen for like $1,300. I mean, I don't know. You know, sometimes you just get good deals too, especially with laptops that can already just in general be all over the place. All right, so that is my answer to the laptop questions. I will now move on to Ocean Cove from Intel. John O'Shea writes in, and he says, what are your thoughts on the recent IPC rumors for Ocean Cove? Is this bullshit or not, in your opinion? Now, with Ocean Cove, for those who don't know, I think a leak came out today or yesterday that kind of summarized some. I don't know how reputable he is. I actually hadn't heard of him before, but it seemed like some other people I think of as reputable seem to be taking it seriously. And he basically talked about how Willow Cove, which is Tiger Lake, and Sapphire Rapids, I believe, is going to be a 10% IPC increase over Ice Lake. And then Golden Cove should be another 20 to 30% over that. Meaning, right, think about it, if Ice Lake is like 15 to 20% higher IPC than Sky Lake, and then Willow Cove, multiply 1.1 over that, and then Golden Cove, multiply 1.2 over that, Golden Cove itself could be 50% higher IPC than Sky Lake, which on the one hand blows people away because that sounds huge, but on the other hand should surprise bloody nobody when Sky Lake's from 5 years ago. And Golden Cove won't come out until over a year from now. So yeah, Sky Lake is going to look like absolute trash in over a year, but it's old. And so I don't think this, I can't 100% verify it, right? But I don't think this is an unreasonable leak at all. And I will point out, as I pointed out on Twitter, all of the things he said are exactly what I reported 7 years ago. To this day, I think my biggest leak video in my channel's history, the most accurate and well done one, was not the Ampere video. It was Whispers of Golden Cove. And I said this over 7 months ago when everyone was making fun of Intel, and still is, and still should make fun of Intel, let's be clear. I said 10 nanometer process will be working by the end of 2020. You will start seeing more Ice Lake laptops. Ice Lake server will come out in volume at the end of 2020. Tiger Lake will be impressive with almost 14 nanometer clock speeds and another IPC increase, and Golden Cove could be the next Sandy Bridge, and Ocean Cove after that should be pretty good. That's what I said 7 months ago, and what do we know? Ice Lake laptops are starting to show up more and more. We know that Intel just signed an Ice Lake supercomputer contract for, I think, for supply by early next year. They wouldn't sign that contract unless they thought they could supply those 38-core Ice Lake server chips in volume by then. Tiger Lake is leaking 4.7 gigahertz, guys, 5 to 10% more IPC, just like I said it would. With PCIe 4.0, just like I said it would 7 months ago. And then my information on Golden Cove back then was mostly around the IPC and the fact that it'd be on 10 nanometer most likely, and that it would have more than 10 cores. I didn't know it might use Big Little though. You know, that's the only change. So far, that's my most accurate leak in history. Now, does that mean that I'm saying Intel's going to win everything with Golden Cove? Of course not. Zen 3 will be out by then. Probably better than Golden Cove overall. Although I do suspect Alder Lake could be a killer gaming chip. I mean, I'm sorry, 50% higher IPC than Skylake with 8 cores, 16 threads, and then 8 Atom cores for background tasks to handle Gen 4 SSD IO like the consoles do. Alder Lake sounds amazing. I'd be waiting for that if you want a super gaming CPU. Unless you need to upgrade soon, then of course get Zen 3, because Zen 3 should blow everything away. But yeah, and so that brings us to Ocean Cove. My point is, in bringing up all of this information, this leaker just supposedly confirmed all the stuff I've already said, but then added Ocean Cove info. And I've already received some early Ocean Cove info that I talked about at the end of my Van Gogh video from Thursday. 80% higher IPC overall. That lines up with some of the info I have, guys. So I'm not confirming it, but I'm saying, could Ocean Cove almost double IPC over Skylake? Well, yeah, but Ocean Cove's coming like 7 years after. 7 years after Skylake. So that'd be like saying, should we be blown away that Ice Lake has 80% more IPC than like a Core 2 quad? Of course not. Core 2 quads are old as shit. So, yeah, I think that Ocean Cove rumor could be true. But it's a long ways away. And I think AMD is going to be raffle stomping Intel. They might even have like Zen 5 by then. So let's not take this as me confirming anything special about Intel there. But anyways, yeah, so that's the Ocean Cove info. And let us now move on. I got several OLED monitor questions. So let's get into that. Just writing down the timestamp for the viewers later. Okay. Lebo King Kilo writes in, and he says, "Hey, Tom, LG TV question. I was about to pull the trigger on a 55-inch C9 for $1,300 when I saw this $500 Nano IPS LG TV come in for sale for, just $500 as well. Is the gap from LED Nano to OLED C9 really worth that $800 price premium? Would you stay with the value or still buy the C9? Well, I bought the C9 when it was more expensive. So the answer is I choose the C9. And I like what he says here, though. Well, no, let me say this first before I continue his question. The reason I bought that OLED TV is because I've never bought a nice TV for myself, ever. And when I saw finally an OLED come out that supposedly fixed burn issues, that had FreeSync support, that had full 120 FPS 4K support, that had really, really low latency, which I verified with a high-speed camera. Its latency is crazy low. I said, I'm going to spoil myself. I don't spoil myself all the time. I was using Skylake quad cores in my main editing PC till the end of last year, till December last year, even though I had a successful YouTube channel. By then, I should have been using 2700X or even Threadripper. I mean, it really was worth it. But, I'm very picky and when I upgrade and how I spend my money on, and that OLED TV was me spoiling myself just once. And it's because OLED is the pinnacle for a while, in my opinion, in TV technology. You can talk about micro LED all you want, but guess what? Samsung just canceled a lot of TN production. They're switching to OLED too. That might be one of those Tom was right situations again, where I just think OLED is going to be the gold standard for the best image quality for the foreseeable future. And when I saw one OLED TV check all the boxes, I bought it. And I didn't look back. And let me put it this way. I got it early 2019. And for an entire year, I've been able to watch movies and stuff with the absolute best picture quality on the market. And I'm a big cinephile. I love great Hollywood movies. It's been great during the quarantine, huh? To have that, on the Game of Thrones last season, I got to watch it on a display better than a movie theater. And so if that's important to you, then you buy OLED, in my opinion. You do. But it's up to you to decide if it's worth double the money. But it's basically the best you're going to get. It has perfect black levels, per pixel dimming. We can't make something better than per pixel dimming. Theoretically, it's not going to get better, guys. Could we get brighter displays that are better in rooms with a lot of sunlight? Yes, but that's not going to look better than this. That just means it looks better in a bright room. Can we solve burn-in issues? Sure, but they've already basically fixed them. Just don't leave it on 24/7 with a big blue image. Easy to not do that. And I've left it on in the background in all of my videos the whole time. No burn-in. No burn. I've used desktop on it, played games in HDR. No burn-in for over a year. So far, I think I recommend it wholeheartedly, but it's up to you. It's up to you to decide if it's worth the money. Plenty of these other TVs look great as well. It's up to you to decide if it's worth the money. Now, things are going to keep getting cheaper. And I just can't say anything else besides that. But he goes on, and I like that Lebo King asks this question. All right, here's the metaphor for me. LG cost is actually a lot higher, right? It's been a 500. So basically, it's worded weirdly, but what he's asking is, would you think it's smarter to get a 5700 XT and this OLED display, or would it be better to get a Nano IPS TV and a 2080 Ti? Easy answer: 5700 XD plus OLED. It's not even close to a hard question for me. That's why I like that he asked that. Not even close of a question. The 5700 XT with true, pure, per pixel dimming blacks and a 5700 XT is going to make a 2080 Ti on any other display look like horseshit? That's an easy answer. There's always some settings you can turn down, but the perfect blacks, there's no ghosting on OLED. Zero. So you can play in 120 hertz, zero ghosting. It doesn't have pixels the same way a TN panel does, right? So you can play it on lower resolutions and it doesn't look as bad, right? It's like a CRT monitor in that way, right? It's like the best qualities of a CRT, except it doesn't look like shit. I don't like CRTs, by the way, but CRTs at lower resolutions didn't look as bad because of how they showed resolutions. And that's what you get out of OLED as well. So just play your game in 1800p instead of 4K with the 5700 XT. It will for sure look better than a 2080 Ti and native 4K. All right, that's my OLED rant. I do them from time to time. My Little Pony writes in and he says, I'm just waiting for either an OLED 4K 120 hertz monitor to be announced, or I'll end up grabbing one of those new 48-inch OLED LGs coming out later this year, which I think they're actually launching now. Right now, LG's launching 48-inch TVs that are just barely small enough, I think, for a giant desk. It's still too big for me, though, unfortunately. He says, it's a little bigger than I might prefer, but after using my 55-inch C9, which is, again, the TV behind me, I can't go back to my old monitor. It's true. It's kind of made me start migrating to using my console more because that's what's plugged in to the TV. The HDR and OLED, it's just ridiculous quality. Unfortunately, 48-inch is too big for me, my desk here. It's actually a rather large desk, but the way I have it set up just wouldn't work. I think I would go down to like 36 inches, though, if that came out for under $1,000, because the picture quality, and assuming it was a good monitor as well, by the way, of course, with low latency, because it really just looks incredible. But yeah, I mean, those should be coming, guys. I don't know what else to say, especially now that Samsung's moving to OLED production. That's very good news because that'll bring, basically, LG was making the OLED panels for everyone, almost, I think that might literally be true. And now that Samsung will bring some competition, prices should go down even further, and we should see them actually wind up in more monitors. All right. The ninth dude writes in and he says, how's it going, Tom? Okay. I was sitting around today and I had a moment of clarity where I wondered, where the hell are the OLED monitors? We have OLED displays for phones, laptops. Yeah, the PlayStation Vita had an OLED display in bloody 2012 and TVs, but they're suspiciously absent from the desktop space. Do you have any idea why there's a drought of OLED desktop monitors? Well, I've long said that I think it's because people keep paying $2,000 for shitty TN 4K displays. And as long as the manufacturers can get gamers to waste $2,000 on something that doesn't look half as good as a $1,300 OLED TV, they're going to keep milking you. It's the same with graphics cards. If you pay $1,300 for a $600 graphics card, NVIDIA is going to keep charging it because why the hell would they not? But with these LG displays coming out that are, sub $1,500 and make the current 4K monitors look like a garbage, I think you're going to start seeing more and more these prices come down and OLED finally be shoved into monitors. Although it is worth pointing out that while OLED has zero burden issues for gaming or for TV, if you are someone that did a lot of Excel work, I still suspect OLED could have a problem there. Of course, I don't know. Every year, OLED gets more reliable, so it's hard to say. But I do still think that's part of it. Basically, and I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again, I'd say in 2018, OLED was ready for prime time for movie viewers. In 2019, the model I got, it was finally ready for gamers and laptop users. And in 2020, hopefully it's ready for desktop use. But I would like to see the reviews to prove it is, right? Because there's a very big difference between putting an OLED display in a laptop that dims itself, that's usually only on for an hour at a time, that usually puts the display to sleep to save battery life. Same thing with a phone. Whereas on a desktop, you might just have a static Word document on an OLED display for 10 hours straight accidentally. So very big different type of usage. So that is worth pointing out. And the only other thing I'll say is you got people like the Eve Spectrum coming. I'm already seeing some of those previously $2,000 4K monitors at like $700 sometimes on Amazon. So the prices are coming down, guys. They really are. So, all right. Okay, and here we go. Let me get a sip of water here, though. Almost to the last set of questions. And here we are to the console talk. All right. Ivan Coley Bobby UK writes in, and he says, hi, Tom. With HDR10, will HDR10, in your opinion, be a bigger feature in next-gen consoles besides RTX and seamless gameplay? If we look at high dynamic range implementation in today's games, it's very poor, unpolished, or inconsistent in which games use HDR well, which ones successfully implement HDR10, and which ones even have any real extra visual quality. It was a campaigning disaster for HDR10, I think, a couple years ago. And do you think this is going to change with next-gen consoles? I do. I think there's a few problems. The problem with HDR is how the hell do you market HDR to people when you basically need to have an HDR display to see it, right? So that was a problem. Also, yeah, you had games that weren't really meant for it. And you still have the problem of monitors being marketed as HDR where they have HDR 400, which really isn't HDR, or even monitors that say HDR signal ready, and then they don't even, right? They don't even have any HDR functionality. I have a portable monitor that looks pretty good that I got a couple of years ago, and it has HDR input acceptance, but it doesn't actually look better with HDR. It actually looks worse. So that muddies the waters a lot in how you market HDR, but I do think that's going to start changing with better and better QLED, OLED, hopefully eventually micro LED games built for the ground up for HDR support, which we really still haven't had until right about now. I do think HDR is going to be a much bigger deal next gen, to answer your question. Okay, let's go in here. Crast writes in, and he says, for Broken Silicon 50's segment about the Unreal Engine 5, I found Tom and Dan cussing out the console deniers as very cathartic. I hang out in a lot of different tech discords, and I've been bailing them for an hour or two at a time because I'm tired of people saying these consoles can't possibly beat the 2080 Super. These arguments are flaring up more and more, and people are getting steamed, and it seems like they're just trying to convince people of something that's already been proven as false. And he's saying it's false that these consoles are clearly powerful. And he says, I have a theory of why things are so shitty this time around. I'm a Gen Xer, and I was around during the launch of nearly every console, at least every modern one. And before the launch of the PS1 Saturn in 1994, our only places to argue about the upcoming consoles was at the lunch table at school. I remember those days. And he says, and all our info came from like reading one issue of Game Informer where they would do a breakdown of a console and then we'd argue for 2 months. Yes, I remember that as well, those days. He goes, this time around, we not only have our second console launch with an echo chamber on Reddit and PCMR, but our first with an upteenth bazillion tech discords. There's just tons of places for incessant whining and echo chambers on their own opinions. And everyone's been stuck in home for 2 months, so they're probably just going insane arguing as well. But anyways, clearly the answer is lost your shit over an epic demo. Yeah, a lot of people have. Anyways, he says, by the way, in 1994, at our lunch table, we were all convinced the Saturn would outsell the original PlayStation due to Saturn's great game catalog and titles and we were so wrong. Yeah, you're very wrong about that. I think everyone was surprised by the success of the original PlayStation, though, let's be honest. Anyways, he goes, yeah, I mean, I agree with, look, my answer to you, Crass, I agree with basically everything you said. I don't really want to repeat it too much. I don't want to start another flame war. But I mean, what else can I say? You know, in Broken Silicon 50, me and Dan did some pretty deep digging into the Unreal 5 information and everything about it. I've actually done some research since. I honestly don't know what to say. Like one thing I'll say now that I'll probably end up saying again is I find it comical how many people are like speculating like, oh, can it run on this? What did he mean by this statement? When you can literally go to podcasts where Tim Sweeney and people who worked on the demo are there just talking. There's no speculation. They said that to run it on a 2070 Super, you need to scale the demo down. That's what they said. Like, and people are speculating what he meant by it runs on a 2070. Of course it runs on possibly on a 2070 as long as you have a fast Gen 4 SSD. But he literally says in a different interview, if you scale it down, It doesn't run better on a 2070, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. The consoles are way stronger than the 2070 before we even talk about the SSD. And since then, I've also talked to some developers. I don't know. I honestly don't know if I'm going to do a PlayStation 5 update video. I'm kind of tired of talking about it. And the fact that Sony's probably going to reveal all information within a couple of weeks makes me just go, it's not worth the dealing with fanboys. But the fact of the matter is, I've had several people tell me that they really, really aren't sure if the demo would run on an Xbox. That's not to say Unreal 5 won't. Of course, Unreal 5 is going to work on everything. They said it's going to run on smartphones. They're a third-party developer. Of course, it's going to run on everything. But if that exact demo will run on it, I don't know. I've got a lot of people that say it probably wouldn't. But you have to remember that demo isn't a game they're going to sell. Although it is playable, apparently. Apparently, that is a playable game that's like 10 minutes long. So that's not pre-rendered. That was running on an actual system, and they were actually playing it, apparently. And all I can say is that demo was meant to show how well their engine leverages I/O. That's why they chose the PlayStation 5. They made and I've said this in Broken Silicon 50, so I don't know why this is like news. And this comes from information that's out there. Like, if they made a demo for the Xbox, it would probably just be a different demo to use a bunch of compute units, right? Because that's what they do, right? You know, they want to show one demo for showing one type of strength of their engine, and that one was meant to showcase I/O. So of course they choose a PlayStation 5. Trying to think of what else. Oh yeah, the only other thing I talked about in Broken Silicon 50 that I'm going to reiterate, it wasn't running on a 2080 laptop. That was a mistranslation. Again, it's all out there. They played the video from an MP4 file on a 2080 laptop, and then later said Unreal Engine 5 will work on these laptops. They didn't say that demo would run on it. This has been completely debunked. And it's hilarious to see people in forums speculate about what they meant when they've literally clarified it in other interviews. But no one wants to watch those interviews if it hurts their fanboy opinions. So I don't know. I just think it's funny. But yeah, I guess I wrote one more thing down about this, and this is the last thing I'll say, hopefully, unless you guys ask a bunch of reader mails. I mean, a bunch of tips for questions. Let me see, what did I write down here? There's a lot of people and a lot of tech tubers like saying a bunch of ridiculous stuff right now. And a lot of these opinions basically come down to assuming two things: that all developers are lying, or that you know more about game development than these developers. Like, I don't know how arrogant and stupid you would have to be to think you know more about game development than all of these developers. They've said what they've said, and they've said it's impressive. So just get over it, fanboys. I mean, what's more likely, that there's some grand conspiracy going on, or that maybe, just maybe, and I'm talking to some tech tubers right now, you don't know how games work and you just benchmark cards and make a bunch of graphs? You're not a game developer. Stop acting like you know more than game developers. Listen to the experts out there. It's so annoying. It's so annoying to watch this. I'm going to get mad again if I keep talking about it. Oh, and I did come up with a good analogy for the Unreal Engine 5 deniers. I want to say this analogy because I think this is exactly what's going on. It's like if Tesla says, right, Tesla, the car company, were to say, we have this new electric car coming out, and it goes 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. And then a car enthusiast said, I don't believe in Elon Musk. There's no way that electric car is faster than my gas car because gas cars are the best. Except that's not true, right? And you're just a car enthusiast. You're not someone who designs cars. And all the time throughout history, we've had the way we render, the way we build things change. And this is happening again with next gen. And this should excite you. This should excite you because it's going to bring us new games like we've never seen before, like in the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 generation. That's the generational shift we're looking at again. And yes, things might be awkward on PC. And things were awkward on PC when the 360 and PS3 came out for like 2 years because things changed. You needed more than a single core. You needed a much more powerful graphics card. They were doing crazy different things. And I think it's going to be double true this time. So let me have specific questions you can ask me in the live Q&A in a second. And again, I'm going to be very honest. I don't know if I'm going to do a PlayStation 5 leak video because I just don't want to deal with the fanboys, frankly. And a lot of the information is a little shaky, but I'll tell you things honestly now in a second if you'll ask me. I'll just tell you what I know. but I'm not going to do a specific video because it's not stuff I'm ready to double down on. But let me get to the last reader mails, and then I'll crack open a beer and we'll get into the Q&A. Edward Huff writes in, and he says, like, let me put a timestamp here. Reader. Okay. Edward Huff writes in, and he says, once VR headsets get high res enough, do you think virtual monitors will render... once VR headsets get high res enough, do you think the virtual monitors inside of a VR headset will replace monitors even for flat out non-VR games? No, I don't think so, but I think there's going to be a lot more competition. And I think there will be some people, especially in countries like Japan, where space is at a premium, where people will say, I'm not buying a 55-inch TV. I live by myself, and I'm just going to use a VR headset. I think that's already happening, actually. I'm pretty sure. And I think that's going to be a thing. But I'm going to speak for myself. I don't wear gaming headsets. I like being able to kind of sit back in my chair or on my couch and have good speakers and surround sound bring the noise to me, because it's more relaxing. I don't like it when you put stuff on my head. And so I'm going to use VR headsets for cool experiences, but I still think I'm going to use monitors. And I think a lot of people will too for the time being. However, VR is not a fad. It's here to stay, and it's going to keep this like long trudge climbing up the mountain of becoming mainstream. I think there will be a lot of people that just get a VR headset eventually and not a really great monitor. You'll still have a monitor for like $100 in case you need it, but I do think there will be a lot of people that just use VR headsets. I don't think it's going to flat out replace monitors, but I think it's going to replace part of the market. I do. All right. Amid Rummer 1990 writes in, he says, hi, Tom. Do you think that RDNA 2 or Ampere will be strong enough combined with a Gen 4 SSD and DDR4 for the PS5 levels of performance? Or do we need to wait for DDR5 and faster storage? Honestly, actually, it might be Emmy Drummer now that I think about it. Emmy Drummer or Amid Rummer. Yeah, wait. Emmy Drummer makes way more sense than Amid Rummer. Sorry. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm planning to do a video when I get a chance to do it, that what I think the stages of upgrading PCs to Eclipse console performance are going to be, right? Like I've spitballed this with Dan, and I want to run it past Carbon Cry, my SSD, and developer contacts to see if they think this might be true. But I'll break it down for you quickly right now. Basically, what I suspect, this year you're fine on PC, right? You're fine. The games are still mostly meant to run on the kind of hardware we have now. There will be PlayStation 5 exclusives, though, that just straight up won't run on PC. Right, there just will be. And there may be launch Xbox games that require an SSD to run. There might be, even as early as this year. But any third-party game that isn't some Xbox or Microsoft exclusive or PlayStation exclusive, you're still going to run on your current PC. And then I think next year what you're going to see is you just need an SSD. Sorry. Like, listen to my SSD Broken Silicon. It's over 2 hours long. It's really in-depth and good, I think. I think it's our most popular Broken Silicon episode, where we go through how once you abandon hard drives as the primary tech, they just don't work anymore. So I think next year, they're just not going to run a lot of games, especially by the end of the year. And they'll require a SATA SSD even to boot, and you will have some performance issues if it's a SATA SSD. Especially because the SATA protocol, I believe, only lets communication in one direction at a time. So that just like ain't going to run games as well as an NVMe drive. So that's next year. And I think what they're going to say is, hey, on PC, you need 16 gigabytes of RAM and an 8 gigabyte at least graphics card, right? And I think that's just going to be standard. You're going to already need an SSD and more RAM than the console so you can load more assets into it. And then I think by the end of 2022, I just think it's just going to be this transition of like, you need 32 gigs of RAM, guys. Sorry. And then you need like a 16 gigabyte graphics card, because we need to be able to load most of the assets in the RAM so we can compete with the console's I/O. That's just what's going to happen in late 2022 and 23. And then eventually 64 gigabytes will be standard. We'll have blazing fast SSDs and everything will be fine. But until then, it's going to be awkward. And you're gonna, because I mean, like the PlayStation, well, the Xbox is the equivalent of like 13 Zen 2 cores when it comes to handling the IO. The PlayStation is somewhere between 15 and 18 cores, I believe, because they have 9 in the Kraken, and they have another coprocessor. They actually have 2 coprocessors that's the equivalent of 2 more cores. So what is that? 11 plus 8, like 19 cores worth of processing. So like right now already, technically, you would probably need like a, you know, like a 3950X to keep up late next year. But by then we'll have Zen 4. We'll have Alder Lake. Alder Lake's going to be like 24 threads. So like, again, I think people freak out when they hear me say this stuff and they forget. I'm not saying you got to upgrade now. I'm saying you will in a year and a half. And weren't you going to anyways? But some people may get left behind if they don't have an SSD. And again, right now I'm going to do a video on it and it'll be more specific. I may have made a couple mistakes just now because this isn't a well-researched video, but that's kind of the type of stuff I'm thinking about. So take this as me just kind of speaking off the cuff. VR5 and PCIe 5.0, what are those speed increases going to affect in day-to-day use? Well, they're going to allow for higher performance. I don't know how much more to say about that, right? Like, I mean, it allows more bandwidth, more ability to send more data, higher frame rates. That's what that's going to allow. You don't really need it yet most of the time, but you will eventually. Why is everyone spamming F? I can see all of your chat, guys, just so you know. Like, if you're having connection problems, I'm not. In fact, let me double check this just to make sure I'm not smoking something. Let's see let me turn this off, the volume, see what it looks like. Yeah, guys, the stream's working, so it's your fault. Stop spamming F. Anyways, if the stream's not working in your area, it's not in it's working fine in mine. Anyways, sorry to the future viewers. I'm pretty sure this is going to look weird for future viewers. And then Sean Barry goes on to say, gonna miss Dan in the podcasts. Dan's still going to be in Broken Silicon. He's just going to be calling in from Massachusetts again. And so we'll actually probably have better mic quality, if we're going to be honest. Yeah, I know. Before you guys press F for respect, maybe press F5, you dipshits. Anyways. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be mean there. Carbon Cry writes in, will you ever stop crediting me twice in the Patreon shout outs? It makes me feel bad as if I did something morally wrong. I hate. Yeah, Carbon Cry doesn't like doing stolen valor like Christina P and Tom Segura do. Those guys steal valor all the time. Let's see. Let me see. Do I really have Carbon Cry twice here? I'm going to look. And let me look here. You're not twice in the credits as far as I can tell, Carbon Cry. Unless, oh, wait, are you over here? No, you're not twice in the credits. I think Carbon Cry is talking about the fact that I give him credit for supporting me on Patreon, and then I also give him credit after, because he's a technical editor for Moore's Law is Dead. That's fine. You know, if Quentin Tarantino directs a movie, but he also acts in it, he gets credited twice. He gets credited for acting, he gets credited for directing the movie. Carbon Cry, you get credited twice if that's what you're talking about. All right, let me see. And that's all of the reader mails. I'm going to now get to the questions of people who tipped me. Let me full screen the live chat. Let me see here. And I'm going to get a beer because clearly I need to calm down after cussing you guys out, right? This is Prairie Path. Prairie Path is one of my favorite beers right now. It's gluten-free, actually, so it feels less bloaty. It tastes incredibly good. Anyways, let me put that down. 44 minutes, timestamp live Q&A. There were some people that tipped me before I started the live Q&A, though, so let me make sure I don't miss anyone. I do not like missing people. Let's see. I will try to get to all of you, but let me see here. All right. I had to refresh it from Chris B. Yeah, sorry. I don't know what to say. That happens. I suspect, and I've seen this happen before, where if there's some stall during the live stream, wait for this to be rendered and finalized, and you'll see that it just looks like everyone was freaking out over nothing. Maybe I'm wrong, but, everyone lagged out for 10 seconds. We're all good now. Okay. Mustache Boy writes in, and he says, is FreeSync Premium worth it on Samsung TV consoles, or do you prefer LG CX? And not that I play both PC and console, don't know which to pick. I mean, again, guys, I bought the C9. I recommend the C9 over the CX. Some people were complaining about the bandwidth of HDMI in the CX, which is the replacement model for the C9. But as far as I can tell, that bandwidth difference should never make any difference to anyone. So I recommend the C9 though, because it's cheaper, because it's a model year older. I bet you can get the 55-inch model for like $1,000 in some places now. And if you can, I would nab that sucker up. Now, for using it as a monitor, a lot of people are just going to want the 48-inch version because it's too big to put on your desk. I'm sorry, it's too big. Really wish they would make a 32-inch version. God, I would buy that in a second. Carbon Cry says, good to know your editor is a dip hit. Is that what I said instead of dipshit? Well, then I'm a dipshit for not even swearing at you correctly. KMP writes in, would the 3080 Ti be upgradable for a pre-built X570 motherboard? Oh, of course it will. Yeah, again, I always see this question to this day, and it's always confused me why this is. Your 3080 Ti will work in a PCIe 5.0 motherboard in 2 years, and also a PCIe 1.0 motherboard. It doesn't matter. All these PCIe's are compatible with each other. There's just more bandwidth if you have a newer card with that standard and the board with that standard. So yeah, it'll work fine. It'll work fine. I mean, I might end up getting Ampere. Really, it honestly excites me what I hear about Ampere, I gotta say. Let's see. Yeah. Carbon Cry says, okay, so that is, I credit you twice that way. So I suspected correctly. Okay. KMP, is 5 nanometer really worth returning for if I just got the 3950X? Well, I keep telling people this. If you need to upgrade to whatever you need, right? I held out as long as I could because I was so busy. I needed to wait till Christmas time when I had a couple weeks off to finally build my PC. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter what was out. I was just going to buy the best thing for the money for what I need. 3950X checked all the boxes. Threadripper was, in my opinion, would have been a waste of money for me, right? And I think I picked the perfect one. I think the 3900X actually wouldn't have been quite good enough for what I wanted to do with my PC, and Threadripper would have not been utilized enough by me. Threadripper would have been a waste of my time for the money. So I got a 3950X. If you've just bought a 3950X, I guess the one thing I'll say is the 3900 XT should be coming out right in about a month. And I think that might actually be as good as a 3950X for less money when you consider it could be as much as 10% better. And yeah, or close to as good for less money. And that's probably what I'm going to recommend. Right. For me, it was always the 3900X is 500, 3950X 750. I will pay 50% more for higher boost clocks and 33% more cores every time. And then it turned out 3950X uses less energy than the 3900X. So I thought the 3950X was easily worth paying 50% more than the 3900X. But then the second the 3900X became 400, I'm like, well, that's a better deal, though. I mean, at that rate, that's just a way better deal. And now that the 3900 XT will be 10% better for 500, I don't know. If the 3950X is 600, I'd still get the 3950X if I'm not a gamer first. But, anyways, my point is this. You can wait as much as you want. AMD and Intel are going to keep bringing Intel eventually. Intel's kind of screwed for about half a year, but AMD at the very least will keep bringing good products that are way better than the previous ones every year. So you can wait. If you wait for Matisse 2, Zen 3 is right around the corner. If you wait for Zen 3, Zen 4 is right around the corner. You can wait as long as you want. I don't know what's really going to, just only upgrade when you need to and upgrade to what you need at that time. Don't go for too much overkill because new stuff's always coming out, right? And like, for instance, if you're someone who got a 3800X now, or even, you know, if you got a 2700X and you're like, ooh, I want a 3950X, but it's so expensive and you waited, probably worth waiting, right? Because Zen 3 is going to be a killer gaming chip. You'll just throw it in your motherboard. At least AMD is going to let you put it in your motherboard now. Okay, and let me keep going down the questions. All right, let's see. Mike Farino writes in, there are questions earlier than what you started. They didn't pop up for me, man. Like, let me see if I can find them. I'm sorry, like I cannot find those original reader mails. So yeah, I guess the chat may have disappeared and I missed it. Maybe I'm the dumbass. But I mean, that's why I tell you guys to not tip me until after I start the Q&A. I can't be helped that your questions got deleted by YouTube. Right now is when you do it. Let me see. Thank you for the tip, Dragoon Kane. Make sure you ask a question, any question you want if you tip me. I feel bad when I get tipped and there's no question. And really the tipping's there just so I notice your question. Jan says, tell us about the PS5 leaks. So when it comes, so let me write that down as a timestamp, of course. So yes, I'll tell you a little bit about what I know. Like I've gotten little bits and pieces of PS5 information since my original giant PlayStation 5 analysis video, and I've talked to a couple of tech tubers that I don't think I'm going to mention that seem to have very legitimate info, and it lined up with some of my info actually. You know, I guess in a nutshell, all I'm going to say is there might be more to the design of the PlayStation 5 than we know. There's a few things that were suggested, like there could be some L4 cache we're not aware of. There could be a unified CCX of 8 cores like Zen 3. I am not saying PlayStation 5 is Zen 3. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying it could be the equivalent of Zen 2 Plus. I was also told the Xbox may have the equivalent of a Zen 2 Plus, although when I look at the die shots, it looks like a standard Zen 2, so I don't know if that's true. It doesn't look like those CCXs are unified, so I don't know. But that was suggested. I can't 100% verify either of those things. But what I've seen from the cooling patents also looks like it might have some kind of 3D stacked cooling, which is interesting, which would make sense. That also lines up with another rumor I've heard that the PlayStation 5's cooling system is really unique. It's not just expensive because the thing runs at 2.2 gigahertz. That they put a lot of effort into not making it right like a big PC. They want then that they're going to use that. I heard they're going to use that in their marketing, that we made this a slim console again despite running at these clock speeds. Again, because I can't get enough sources to verify this stuff and it's such an insane bombshell, I don't want to do a video about it because I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. Outside of that type of stuff, oh, I don't know. I have several developers telling me the Xbox couldn't run that demo. But of course it can run Unreal Engine 5. I'm trying to think of what else there was. There were a couple of Xbox things as well, actually. Both consoles are really powerful. I don't know why people are becoming such fanboys. That's something I got to keep reiterating. Expect a ton of launch exclusives. And yeah, don't expect either console to be overpriced. I'm trying to think about what else I can tell you guys that I haven't put into a video. I feel like I'm there, but there's more. There's more than meets the eye with the PlayStation, it sounds like. And that they're both very capable, and that everyone really thinks people are underestimating the performance of the PS5 in general. So that's all I'll really say. If you've got specific questions below, though, guys, I'll answer those. Dragoon says, please elaborate on your PlayStation 5 leak. So yeah, I just told you all of that stuff. I don't know if that's what you guys wanted to hear, but I mean, you know, there might be a little bit of a unified CCX with some very cheap 3D stacking. Again, not saying it's 3D stacked, but there's some kind of on-die RAM possibly. I don't know. Which, if you look at some Sony patents, it actually kind of lines up. KP writes him, and he says, I'm such a noob, LOL. Is water cooling required in a water-cooled PC setup? Yes. I turned it on working fine, but there were no instructions for where to add the water or cables or screws. Don't know if they were just extra parts. Oh, they were probably extra parts. I'm assuming, by the way, KP, that you're talking about an all-in-one liquid cooler. Those usually come with some extra screws. And a lot of other things on PC do now as well. I assume that's what you're referencing. And yeah, there's not much to an all-in-one. You just plug it in and it works, and you just make sure it's plugged in or the thing gets crazy hot. I don't really have anything else to say without a more specific question. I've never done a custom cooling loop because I've never frankly had the time to do it. And also, like, if I have to upgrade, then that's a nightmare for me, at least. I've never bothered with that. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I generally recommend all-in-one liquid coolers now, though, because they're reasonably priced and their quality's gone substantially up from when they first came out. When they first came out, they were either really expensive or unreliable. And now you've got plenty of all-in-one liquid coolers that are like better than any air cooler could ever be, arguably take up less room than the giant air coolers, and sometimes even cost the same or less. So I really recommend all-in-one liquid coolers at this point. I wish more graphics cards would come with them without a marked up price, because they're not that expensive, right? I'm so tired of seeing those water cooled versions of like a 2080, 1080 Ti, even 980 Ti's had water cooled versions. Then they'll throw like a $300 upcharge, and it's like, it really shouldn't cost you more than $50, right? Because you don't have to pay for that old heatsink. So how much more is this liquid cooling unit over the previous big thick heat sink with triple fans? It's probably only an extra 50 to $100. I understand you want to make extra profit, but that annoys me when it's like, like if there's a $750 graphics card, the water cooled version should just be $850. It shouldn't be $1,000. That's ridiculous. I'm so sick of seeing that. But I suspect RDNA 2 will have a water cooled version as well. So, and when it comes directly from AMD, it's not overpriced, right? Usually not. I mean, the Fury X was $650. All right, so that's my water cooling talk, I guess. Do you think we'll ever see NVIDIA approach Microsoft or Sony for a future console? I mean, you never say never, but no. I mean, for backwards compatibility reasons, Microsoft and Sony want to use AMD. And I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I think NVIDIA would be much more open to working with Sony or Microsoft or anyone who might make a console in the future, now that they've seen how much this has helped AMD's Radeon strategy, right? Now that they see AMD printing consoles and getting developer support, I bet NVIDIA really regrets. Like, there's no reason the PS3 used NVIDIA. There's no reason NVIDIA couldn't have tried harder to get into the PlayStation 4, although I don't think they could have back then because the APU was just a cheaper design, but they missed it. They were cocky. They were arrogant. They underestimated how popular consoles would continue to be, and they thought there was no money there. But it was a long-term strategy that saved AMD, and NVIDIA probably regrets it. And that's why they're probably giving those Tegra chips away to Nintendo for free so they can start getting back into there. And so I suspect they're going to try hard to be in the next Switch as well because of that. But going into Microsoft or Sony, Zach, I just don't really see it anytime soon. And the console generation hasn't even started. We know the next one's AMD. So when I say anytime soon, I'd say, I don't know, maybe the PS8 in 2030 or 2040. But by then, who knows if there will even be consoles. All right, let me see. I don't want to miss questions. Okay, let's see. Carbon Cry, you swore correctly, but YouTube won't let me use dirty words. Oh, okay, I see. What to ask. Is Dan okay? Yeah, Dan's doing great. He's up in Boston again, preparing to move to a different college for grad school. Yeah, Dan's doing great. We were playing Hunt Showdown last night. That's a fun game, by the way. Mike Farino writes in, I feel that Ocean Cove leak was just a target number. 1.5 that is 1.5 years plus out, and it's too early for solid info. I agree, though. No, I mean, that's what I would say about Ocean Cove, is it's way too far out. I know Ocean Cove is going to be heavily 3D stacked from a source. I know they're going to use TSMC, or they're planning to, it sounds like, for part of the design. But then, it's like 2 years away, so who knows? They could change their mind. And that IPC increase is entirely expected. Let me see. The number one schmuck writes in and says, do you think AMD might split R3, R5, R7 branding for the Ryzen 4000 series with 4, 6, 8 cores on Renoir APUs? Well, it seems like that's kind of what they're doing, doesn't it? And then 6, 8, 12 cores on Vermeer CPUs. That's an interesting question. You're basically asking, is there a chance they will put 6-core Zen 3 CPUs is R3, 8-core for R5, and 12-core for R7, even though the Ryzen 7 4700G is just 8 cores. And the reason they would do that is because that comes with a graphics card. I don't know. I don't think so, though. I don't think so. I've long said, and that was one of my more popular videos, the 4700G. In that my 4700G analysis video, I was like, if they're calling an 8-core Renoir Ryzen 7, I don't think they're increasing core counts at a lot of segments in Zen 3 like I thought they were. I think they might still do it. For instance, I wouldn't rule out the chance that the R5 4600X is 8 cores, 8 threads, right? We know that AMD is getting tremendous yields at TSMC. So maybe they'll do that. Maybe the 4500X will be 6 cores, 12 threads. Maybe the 4600X, instead of 6 cores, 12 threads, will be 8 cores, 8 threads, a great gaming chip. You know, maybe they'll do that, but that's about it. I find it unlikely that they would call it a 4700G with 8 cores and then put the 4600X below it with 8 cores and higher IPC than Renoir because it's Zen 3. I just find that unlikely. And what this tells me is Zen 3 is probably going to be a knockout 20% IPC increase in certain scenarios. And so AMD doesn't need to. They don't need to. And if they end up using 5 nanometer for Zen 3, you know, add 5 gigahertz clock speeds and lower power usage to the table as well. And at that point, you're looking at like a 30% performance increase despite not increasing core counts. That's good enough to call it Zen 3 instead of Zen 2 Plus, guys. They don't need to increase core counts at that point. At that point, once Zen 3 gets cheaper, I would even consider upgrading. Like, it's so good. So that's what I think the number one schmuck. It's a good question, though. Zach Miklas writes in and he says, do you think we'll ever see NVIDIA? Did I just skip a? Did you already ask that? Oh, I must have already answered that question and then missed that one. Sorry, guys. You have to understand the way YouTube handles these questions is, let me see. Yeah, the way YouTube handles these questions is a little weird. Let me try this. Let me pop out the chat. Maybe this will make it easier for me to keep track of all the questions. Oh, shoot. It just deleted some of them again. Gontech writes in, and he says, boo, I can't watch at the moment, so just stopped in to say hi. We'll have to watch the stream after I get home. Well, thank you for the tip. Gontech, I wish there was more I could say. Let me go down to this question here. Any chance we'll get PCIe 4.0 on X470 motherboards that can support it? I don't think so. Maybe a modder will make it happen. Maybe select Asus motherboards or like, you know, super high-end X470s will be right. We'll work with AMD to enable it. But to me, it sounds like AMD is just saying, no, you got to buy 500 series motherboards if you want 4.0, which is within their right to do. And I do wonder about the stability with PCIe 4.0 just being added to those motherboards. I mean, we know that it sounds like NVIDIA, Intel is going to do that with the Z490s. Like, it sounds like they have 4.0 ready, but they're just 3.0 for Comet Lake. But they planned that ahead of time, and I don't know that they did with X470. So, Eddie Del Castillo writes in, and he says, we need to get you wearing a shirt with pugs. Here's to the beer fund. I don't know. Pugs are like one of the only cute, ugly dogs I like, to be honest. He says, who do you think will emerge once NVIDIA is gone? Well, I don't think NVIDIA is going anywhere anytime soon. He says, with the AI unveiling, it seems that they are going the industrial route with Tesla. Thoughts? Right. So there's two. What I'll say about NVIDIA is I don't think NVIDIA is going anywhere anytime soon. And even in gaming, I do agree that they want to expand into more professional markets because that's where the money is. But no, I do not think they're going away in AI or this anytime soon. Although I do wonder if they can stay in AI long when so many mega companies like Tesla can just afford to make their own ASIC for specific tasks. And AI is very conductive to that type of a design because it's usually just doing one type of machine learning. You might as well pay the money, right? But yeah, I don't know. Who would replace them in anything? I don't know. And remember, ARM has full DirectX capable graphics that they're just waiting for other people to build themselves. So there could be ARM graphics cards whenever someone wants to do those. We also know about other companies maybe getting into the graphics card space, but I don't know. For the time being, I think NVIDIA is not going anywhere. It's just going to be NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel. Hopefully, NVIDIA will get into the CPU space, though, so we can get some triple competition there. All right. Denvara1G1 writes, when do you think we'll see 7nm IO allowing for 3 times CCDs? I don't think Zen 3 for mainstream. I think we know for sure pretty much Zen 3 goes up to 16 cores. It wouldn't surprise me. We know there's going to be a custom version of Zen 3 server chips. It would not surprise me if there was a higher CCD count than 64 cores for a custom version of a Zen 3 server chip. In fact, wouldn't that be funny if that's the 5nm Zen 3 rumor was all about? Just the fact that maybe the Frontier supercomputer has a 5nm version of Zen 3. Hello, guys. Could that maybe be what's going on and DigiTimes didn't do enough digging? Hello? Let me write that down as a timestamp because that's probably a good point, actually. So I wouldn't rule out custom versions of Zen 3 with SMT4, although that sounds like that's not a thing, or custom versions of Zen 3 with more cores. But I don't think Zen 3 is going to do this. Do I think Zen 4 may add more CCDs? Maybe. Maybe they would. They also just might go up to 10 core CCDs. Why not just do that and bring you 20 core to desktop? I don't think we need more than 16 cores really mainstream yet. It's hard to say, but I guess to answer your question, Denvera, AMD could do this right now if they really wanted to. I hope that answered. Like, if they wanted to right now, they could do a triple CCD and probably shove that in there with a die shrunk IO. They probably could do it right now. They just don't want to, right? So whenever AMD is ready is basically your answer. KMP writes in, if Sega signs a deal with the devil, NVIDIA plus Intel or all AMD partnership. Oh, if Sega were to make consoles again. I don't know what they would go with. I suspect if Sega was getting into the console space, NVIDIA might try to go all out, or Intel might, to try to like make a splash. But AMD is hard to beat, guys. I mean, they have these, they're buddy with TSMC. I mean, the 8-core component of Renoir is like 30mm squared. That's it for an 8-core on 7nm. Once we get to 5nm by the end of the year, we're gonna have like like 16mm squared 8 cores, and then you can combine that with AMD graphics and an APU, which they're the best at making APUs. It'd be hard for me to see Sega and anyone who tries to make a console not still just going with AMD, to be honest. But I mean, I don't know. Will PS5 be backwards compatible with PS1 to 4 discs? Probably not at launch. So that's another thing that I've kind of heard about PS5 that I forgot to mention is it's like there's a lot of evidence they are working on PS3 compatibility for PS5, but they don't have it working perfectly, and they kind of want to announce it as a surprise if they get it working. And that's all I can say. Again, it's not in a specific video because I don't think my information's concrete enough to really make a video about it. So I'm not going to, right? Because I don't want to spread misinformation if I'm wrong. But I think they're working on PS3 backwards compatibility. There's plenty of evidence they're working on PS1, PS2. Will those work with discs? I suspect they wouldn't. Although I don't know how hard it would be to add that. I guess what I'll say is Xbox's focus on backwards compatibility should definitely put pressure on Sony to get everything working. I just don't think they're going to announce it until they can do like a big press announcement. Now it's compatible with PS3. Now it's compatible with PS2. Then also roll out PS2 games on the PlayStation Store. Like, that's what I'm guessing is going on. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. And I will say this about Sony's backwards compatibility. it's ridiculous. Sony needs PS3 backwards compatibility either way. It's absolutely ridiculous, unacceptable practice to not have that backwards compatibility, in my opinion. So what I would say to Sony is this: this is unacceptable. People expect to play their PS3 games without frickin' PlayStation Now. You're going to have PS3 games that are stranded on an old, cumbersome PS3 console. Can't play them on PC that well. Can't play them without PS Now. And PS Now doesn't have all PS3 games. This needs to be solved. So, Sony, figure it out. Either bring backwards compatibility to PS5 or hire a few studios to go back to the top 100 PS3 games and port them. But I'd say they need to do either one, because it's unacceptable that they don't have it if they don't. They need to do either one. And I don't think it'd be that hard to get a few studios to kind of do re-releases with slightly better graphics and higher resolutions and frame rates. You know, maybe you churn out like 10 PlayStation exclusives a year, and then you just re-release them for $20 on PS5. It's unacceptable, though, either way. They need to figure out PS3 games. They need to bring that catalog. This is the best catalog they've had in any generation. They need to bring that catalog to PS5, and no one should be accepting them saying they don't do it. Either bring backwards compatibility or port at least the top 100 PS3 games to PS5 so that moving forward, you're not screwed anymore. It's just ridiculous, if you ask me. All right. I didn't want to say that, though, because that is what I think. And I think too many people are letting Sony get away with that stupidity. Denny Rooseboom writes in, how long do you think it will take to see AMD as a performance leader in the OEM market? Well, there's two ways to answer that question. So I would argue they're almost already a performance leader. If you ask me right now, AMD is already a market leader in most segments, like just straight up. But if you're talking about market share, it's going to take at least a few more years, right, to get those inroads. Now, in absolute no arguments, AMD top performance at everything, I think we could see that in under a year. I think Zen 3 is Zen 3 Plus on 5 nanometer, and all these other things coming out now are going to make AMD the undisputed CPU champion in under a year. Could Alder Lake change things? Maybe. I wouldn't bet on it. It might. Could Ocean Cove? Maybe. But Zen 4 sounds really impressive to me. So I think AMD could become the market leader, or I'm sorry, the absolute performance leader at everything, like Intel did with Sandy Bridge, in under a year. And then it's just a question of how long they can keep it. Potatoes Are Life writes in, potatoes are life. I mean, they taste so good, right? And he says, what do you think about Nuvia? Now, I know Cortex did a Nuvia interview or something. I don't actually know almost anything. I think I've looked them up once. Silicon design reimagined, high performance silicon designs for compute intensive workloads. Yeah, to be honest, I don't have a lot to say about Nuvia. I haven't had a chance to dig into it in depth. And so I don't want to waste time by, trying to speak about something I haven't done research on. So that's unfortunately potatoes my answer, but thank you for the tip. Please keep scrolling. I'm sure there's another. Oh, and it just snapped back. Okay. So Dragon Kane 3 writes in, any info on PlayStation 2 on PSVR? Yeah, let me write down a timestamp. So when it comes to PSVR 2, I only know what I've known a year ago. Supposedly, Sony has put things based on Wi-Fi 6 to make it, supposedly, again, I haven't had an update on this for about a year, so I don't know how much I'm willing to talk about it anymore. You know what I mean? But supposedly PSVR 2's original goal was wireless VR. So, and Wi-Fi 6 is close to Ethernet quality. So if you think they can't do that, no, I think they might be able to run the console, have the console, which you already know is powerful, run the game, and then you pipe it to a Wi-Fi 6 VR set with a battery in it. Drop it in the charging cradle and put it on. That sounds great to me. And supposedly it's 120 hertz, 1440p per eye. 1440p per eye, which, by the way, guys, 1440p is less than half the resolution of 4K. So if they can do 4K 60, yeah, I think they can do 1440p 120 hertz. I do. I really do think they could. The CPU is certainly strong enough. I've heard they've got some RDNA 3 customizations in the PS5 for VR. So RDNA 3 may be an architecture that has some type of variable rate shading that doesn't waste resources on dual rendering things for eyes. So I really think the PlayStation 5 is built for that. Now, of course, I don't think PSVR is going to be announced until next year. I think that's their idea. Get the console out now with a bunch of exclusives late next year and launch PSVR 2 as a second wind for the console to keep it selling. And I think it's going to be 1440p per eye, 120 hertz wireless. If it is, and I'm not saying I'm sure anymore because my information's a year old. If it is, oh, that's going to take the VR market. Let's be honest. They've already basically taken the VR market. And I hope Half-Life Alyx is on it because I still haven't played that yet. Price, I don't know. I have no idea what they would charge for that. Probably. By then, though, 1440p is not that high of a resolution by the end of 2021. So I don't know what it will cost. I would target $300 if I was Sony. I have no idea though. Because then you could bundle the, $300 is still pretty expensive though. So, Ivan, do you think gaming will evolve on next gen? Reusing old tech and remaking stuff became a real trend since 2010's Resident Evil 1 through 4, Gothic remake, Final Fantasy 7. Do you think gaming will revolve on? Yeah, I do. I mean, I think we're going to see entire games we couldn't have done before. The fact that you can stream in assets like that Unreal Engine 5 demo showed, and I suspect the Horizon 2 demo is going to show in about a week. I mean, these are entire genres you couldn't do before. And it's about not having compromises because right now, right, yeah, you can make an open world game with an infinite world and huge view distances, but it might have Minecraft or No Man's Sky graphics, right? You know what I mean? It might have those graphics, and that's not that impressive. I think what we're going to see next gen is the ability to have almost photorealistic graphics and stream in assets without any loading times. And then think about this, right? So, like, this is an example a patron brought up to me. If your SSD can literally stream in assets the way they showed, you could have a Portal game, a game with portals in it, Portal. Because when you played the game Portal, I don't know if you guys know this, but when you shot the portal gun and it showed where you were going to jump, have you noticed how most of Portal is static environments with nothing moving? Yeah, that's because it's really hard to render something through the portal. But there might be almost no performance loss to having a portal in a PlayStation game and then seeing something on the other end of the map, because the fact that you have a 12-channel SSD, dual co-processors, and that type of bandwidth means that you can stream in from multiple parts of the game at the same time, and you might actually be able to see what's going on the other end of the map. The entire concept of having to load other parts of the map is gone. We're going to see games we couldn't make before. That's my answer. And yes, I really think this is going to be a fun generation. I'm so excited. I am so excited, honestly, to see what's going to happen next gen. All right. Denny Roosboom writes in, I should reformulate. How long do you think it will take for the public to see them as the leader? I think people will see AMD as the leader when Zen 3 comes out. That's it's that simple of an answer, honestly. I really think it's that simple of an answer. Curtis Bell writes in without a tip, but I just noticed it. Do you think Microsoft or Sony would ever use a graphite thermal pad instead of thermal paste? You mean like the 360 did or whatever? No. I think they're both going to have good cooling solutions because they're over cheap consoles that overheat. I mean, that's so 2006. They're over that, guys. Eddie De Castillo says, best 4K monitor for the buck in your opinion? I mean, there's $300 IPS monitors if you just want 4K 60. I don't know a specific one, right? I know the Eve Spectrum looks impressive. I know I want to say it was the AOC 4K 120 hertz one is like 750 now, manufacturer refurbished on Newegg or Amazon. So look at that, or it's at least $800. That was tempting for me. I'm still using a 144 hertz 1080p monitor, so I'm definitely tempted by some of these 4K monitors coming down in price. I might just have to get one before I can get an OLED, to be honest. Still using triple 1080p 144 hertz displays. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's my advice. Best 4K monitor for the price, honestly, though, is a C9 TV, if you can put up with how big it is. Just because it looks next gen how good it looks. And it's 4K 120 right now. What is your most anticipated next gen game? By Dragon came. Well, we don't know yet, right? Cyberpunk will probably be good. Honestly, I don't know. I know that there's GTA 6 sounds like it's going to be something that specifically leverages the next gen SSDs effectively to have like I've heard the GTA 6 map maybe 4 to 10 times bigger than the GTA 5 map, but that's probably not coming out for a couple years still. That I'm excited about. I love Horizon. That was a good game, but it's not one of my favorite games. So Horizon 2 I'll be excited for. Honestly, if you wanted to freak me out, Killzone Shadowfall was not as good as the other Killzones. If they made a Killzone 4 that was as good as Killzone 2 or 3, that would get me going. I also hear they're working on a SOCOM, and SOCOM was one of my favorite online games of all time. A photorealistic SOCOM tactical shooter would I'd be so excited. Outside of that, honestly, The Last of Us 2 is probably going to be the best game of the year anyways, so I don't know though. Zach Miklos writes in, did you see the rumor that the PS5 is twice as thick as the PS4 Pro? I did see that. Would you rather have the Xbox Series X tower or a thick square console? So I thought someone was going to ask me about this, so let me pull this up. Console size comparison, Xbox Series X. Because I want to put this in perspective for everybody. Here we go. Here's a comparison of the sizes. Where's PS3 on there? Really? They don't have the PS3? And the PS3 was huge. PS3 was a big, fat console, the launch one. So you gotta bring that into account. PS3 size versus Xbox One. Let's just do that. Right. So if you look at the consoles, right, the PS4 was actually incredibly compact. The Xbox One was over twice as big, it looks like. And the PS3 was still a bit smaller than the Xbox One. The PS3 was heavy as hell. Anyways, though. So keep that in mind, guys, how big those were. And then if I look at the comparison of the current consoles, the Xbox One X is triple the size of the PS4 Pro, right? Pretty much. It's huge. It's fucking enormous. I know people look at it and say it looks like a small ITX console, but I hate to bring it to you guys. The Xbox Series X is enormous for a console. And that cube shape isn't good for an entertainment system. I don't know where you put that. So, I mean, yeah, it's like it's like if you stacked like 3 GameCubes on top of each other and then made it fatter. The Xbox Series X is large. So if you say the PS5 is twice as big as the PS4 Pro, I believe you. I think it's going to be powerful and need a lot of cooling. And I think that's going to make it about the same size as an Xbox Series X. Both of these consoles are going to be big. Although, again, don't forget how freaking huge the PS3 was. That was gigantic, too. Again, that thing was like a goddamn weight. You could lift weights with how heavy the PS3 was. So, I mean, when I look at this question, I don't know. I mean, let me see what the final console looks like. I don't know what I would prefer. If it's on a desk, the Xbox Series X is probably really good. If you're putting it under a TV, like most people will, I assume a standard square. I mean, I'm going to be honest. When you ask me what I want my console to look like, can you just give me a square, a black square? Don't do anything crazy with the design. Like the PS5 dev kit looked crazy stupid to me. It's just, can I just have a black square again, please? Like Dan said to me, if it was literally just a PS4 Pro again, like I'd be fine if that's how it looked. Anyways, that's what I think. I just don't want it to like disrupt my entertainment system or my desk, because I might game with it on a desk instead too. Most of my life, I gamed the PS4 on a desk. Anyways, let me scroll down. And that, oh, here's one. Curtis Bell writes, and he says, now all I want is a next-gen Stargate game for instant portals. Yeah, I mean, again, hearing about that portal situation is really interesting, I gotta say. Someone says Silent Hill reboot will be huge. Yep, I know. I really hope they. I mean, PT was PT was the best horror game I've ever played, and it was a demo. I can only imagine how good a Kojima horror game would be. Let me keep scrolling. Still got 1,000 people watching. And I think I am through the tipped questions. If you guys want to keep tipping, I finally caught up with you guys. Let me see what other questions we got going on here. Let me see what you guys have been saying too, because I've mostly just been trying to answer questions. You sound a bit stuffed up. I don't think I am. I'm breathing out of my nose. It's like the ring on the ceiling is not aligned with the ceiling fan. Well, I don't know. Well, The Last of Us. Last of Us is probably the best game I've ever played, so you can be a dipshit if you want to. Let me see. Xbox Sidewaves. I don't know what that is. PSIe 4.0 can do 28 gigabits per second drive speed. Is that correct? I think you're talking about if you use a full-time 16 slot. That's not true for an NVMe drive. PS5 is going to be a hot box, not according to what I've told. I don't know why people assume that. I find that funny too. It's like, what do we know? From my Ampere leak, Ampere is supposedly going to run at like 2.5 gigahertz. Okay. We already know, it's like an RDNA 2 is already rumored to run past 2.2 gigahertz. Guys, the PS5 isn't running hot. RDNA 2 can just run at 2.2 gigahertz. That's what you guys got to get through your heads. RDNA 2 could be a killer architecture. I always find that hilarious, like assuming, oh, doesn't that mean it's going to run hot? No, that means RDNA 2 is a big threat to NVIDIA. Let me keep going. Get PS5, then Lockhart, or you could just play all of the Xbox games on PC, if you ask me. You can put the Xbox behind your TV and not even see it. Maybe. Depends on your entertainment system, I guess. Wait, where did all these questions come from? Oh, I just had a bunch of reader mails pop up out of nowhere, I think. I don't. Yeah, there we go. Will we ever see some more enterprise podcasts? Yeah, I've got one with someone who works on quantum computing coming. My next guest for this week is going to be someone who's done extensive testing on Zen architectures and Skylake architectures up to 5 gigahertz. And so we're going to, because that's something to talk about. Skylake seems to scale its IPC almost entirely, no matter how fast you clock it. And it seems like Zen 2 kind of hits a performance scaling wall at about 4.4 gigahertz, unless you have insane fabric clocks, which supposedly Matisse 2 might bring to the table. And Renoir supposedly does as well. So we're going to talk about that. We've got quantum computing coming up. Yeah, I'm sure I'll have this server engineer on again. He's a great guest. Yeah, there will be more enterprise people for sure. But I try to focus my guests also around what's happening with my with the videos and the news, right? So now that we know Matisse 2 is coming out, perfect time to have on this guy who's overclocked to 3800X to 5 gigahertz, right? Let's talk about how well it'll perform, which, spoiler alert, it performs about as well as a stock 9900K. But it doesn't seem to scale its performance in all games. Now, if you got the fabric clock 20% higher, it might be Comet-like, but we'll have to see. Eddie de Castillo. Wait, let me see. Carbon Cry writes in, how hyped are you for the upcoming articles on the Moore's Law is Dead website? Yeah, so Carbon Cry, Will TR are working with me on overhauling the website. I have to apologize to Carbon Cry openly right now because, like, seriously, let me write this down as a timestamp as well. I have just been completely waterlogged by my job, which I might be doing this channel full time soon. And when I do, there should be a complete overhaul of the website with more writers and contributors to the content. And when that happens, it'll be big. Until then, Carbon Cry, I'm still treading water with trying to get my content out on time, let alone, but yeah, expect a lot more to come to the website. And so, yeah, so remember that if you support us on Patreon, like, you're making all of this possible. If we get to the next Patreon goal, we can start paying writers and stuff. Anyways, Eddie Del Castillo writes in, Acer AOC cheap monitors, cheap problems. I've had good experiences with a lot of AOC monitors at almost any price point. Asus usually makes great high-end products. Acer can be a bit hit or miss. I don't know. Acer's always been okay for me. You just got to make sure you look up reviews. That's my thoughts, I guess, right? When it comes to cheap monitors and any problems. I've always had good luck with AOC. I'm not going to pretend I've looked at every monitor they've made, though. Of course, talking about AOC, the monitor manufacturer, and not the left-wing politician. Dragon Kane writes in, and he says, in your opinion, should I don't like, these questions are, should I buy a PS5 or upgrade my GPU? Well, we haven't seen the games yet. We haven't seen the price yet. We haven't seen the performance of Ampere and RDNA 2 yet. And so many people ask me this question. They're like, okay, so I should get a PS5. And it's like, well, I don't know. We don't know anything yet. Really, do we? I mean, I just think it depends who you are. At the start of a console generation, at least PlayStation consoles seem to be really good price performance, usually. And then near the end of the generation, they get old, especially this gen. I would not buy a new console probably right now unless, I don't know. I mean, it's different for everybody if it's worth it to you. But then again, I guess I wouldn't buy a new graphics card right now either. I would kind of just wait till the end of this year, whether you want to buy a console or a graphics card. Would you buy Ampere or RDNA 2? Well, it depends. If you just want a game in 4K 60, the console's probably going to do that for a while. Do you use your PC for editing, rendering? Then you might want to get Ampere or RDNA. And you have a 3700. And this is good. So he says I have a 3700X and a Vega 56. That's almost what Dan has, and he doesn't plan to upgrade anytime soon. Like, as long as you have a decent SSD, look, you might have to turn down settings, but at least for the next year or so, that 3700X and Vega will be fine. Vega is going to age well. It's going to run games fine. It has high bandwidth cache. Maybe you'll have to turn down resolution scale to like 70% or something. Oh, well, you'll be able to run games on your PC with that setup for years, I think, as long as you have a decent SSD. Tom, you should do a video about the Tempest engine from XSX. I have a little bit about the Tempest engine as well, but it's very shaky. So I don't want to say crazy things in a video unless I'm a little more sure. Mortimus Maximus writes in, and he says, still using 2500K in my gaming PC with a 1060 at 1080p. The new 1060K or 3600X. Easiest answer in my life. Get Zen. I literally have people inside Intel telling me not to buy their 14 nanometer products. No. Comet Lake sucks. No. And here's the problem is all games are still basically built with Intel's all engines right now were built for Intel's architecture. Once the consoles come out, we have games built from the ground up for Zen 2. I'm sorry. I think AMD is going to gain in gaming performance on Intel, and Intel's going to age like fruit. I really do not recommend buying any 14 nanometer Intel. 10 nanometers are fine. They have new, they don't have the security problems and all this other stuff. And I would get a 3600. Or again, I don't think they're really around anymore, but I maintain that like the $150 2700X was the biggest steal I've like ever seen in my goddamn life. Let me keep going. DJ Aftershock writes in and he says, opinions about the rumored AMD EHP. Well, I don't know what that actually stands for. Let me see here. Oh, exascale heterogeneous processor. Yes, they're still working on it, but I have one source that says don't expect it right away. They're working on it. I just don't think it's ready yet. And that's why I think you see them kind of maybe pushing back Zen 4's specs and other things because, getting a fully 3D stacked massive design is complicated. It's not something we've done before. So it's coming. It's definitely coming, but it's not coming next month or this year. I could be wrong, but it doesn't sound like it is. Haha, good meme writes in and says, is mini LED worth the wait? Worth the wait for what? I think mini LED could be a good budget option soon. Not nearly as good as OLED, but substantially better than the previous TN and IPS panels. If that pans out, like where you get maybe 10,000 dimming zones, lower like 1 millisecond lag time, hopefully, and decent colors. If that was half the price of OLED, I would say, all right, that's good enough where I can see paying a lot less than OLED. But so when you say worth the wait, I don't know what the wait's going to be. That Eve Spectrum still doesn't seem to use mini LED, so I think it's going to be great when it comes out for budget monitors and laptops. It's going to bring close to OLED, not close, but like closer to OLED than not performance for a reasonable price. But I don't know when. So I've heard it has some types of problems as well. All right, let me see. Buy consoles for the exclusives, not the hardware. Well, it depends. I don't know. For the price at launch, the PS4 was basically a 7870 with double the asynchronous compute units and an i3 level processor with 8 gigs of RAM for $400. You sure as shit weren't building a PC like that for a while. So I mean, so I think here's the thing. I have a friend who still has one, and he says, it still works. It still plays all our games. So he's had it for 7 years and hasn't needed to upgrade, and he paid only $400. You can't tell me that hardware wasn't good hardware. I'm sorry. Now, he's sure as shit not doing 144 hertz with it or anything, but priorities. Different people want different things. I don't know why it always turns into a flame war. Talk about 3080 Ti. All right. I got more insider information. 3080 Ti, it's going to be powerful. Heard it here first, people. I should put an exclusive title on the top of my video. Okay. Would you buy a top-end GPU if it is 70% more powerful versus a mid-range card but costs $1,000? Well, how much does the mid-range card cost? I mean, those are like $400 now. It's 70% more performance for over double the price. I don't know. Maybe if it can render and export my videos twice as fast, because time is money when it comes to that. There's been problems and delays with podcasts where I've had to re-upload them, re-edit them, and those can take 45 minutes now. The Radeon 7 cut down rendering times from a couple hours to more like 55 minutes. So if it could cut it down from 55 minutes to 20 minutes, then I'd pay that extra money, though. I would, but it would have to do more than gaming. I've never just gotten my PC for gaming. My original PC did AutoCAD work, and then it did mining, and now it does rendering and editing. I can't understand paying $1,000 for something you only game on. It's unless you're rich. I've always used my PC for more things than gaming. So you got to understand that's where I'm coming from if I buy something expensive. Everope says Tom. Okay. C9 and 30-inch with a 4K resolution. Yeah, that would be very nice. Rice Eater 79 writes in, what are your thoughts on PS5's triangle streaming ability versus pure teraflops rendering? Yeah, I heard something with variable rate shading and mesh shaders actually on the PS5 as well. We know that the Xbox Series X also has like a customized, maybe slightly better than RDNA 2 variable rate shading capability. From what I've heard, the PS5s is built in a different way as well for streaming triangles and then also for VR. So I don't have much to say about that, except teraflops have never meant performance. I really, really, really can't get over how dumb the teraflop arguments are now. It's like, when the fuck have teraflops ever been the end all for gaming performance ever? They've never been. Like Pascal versus GCN and Turing versus Vega. This has never been true. Fair me. versus I mean it's never been true, and all of a sudden it's all people are talking about with consoles. They're not the exact same GPU architectures. They've got entirely different co-processors. Teraflops are not gaming performance. And then people point at the Xbox One and PS4, and it's like the Xbox One had a third the bandwidth. That's probably most of the performance deficit. The fucking teraflops, you geniuses. I mean, my God. Look, I mean, it's just so dumb. Teraflops are really good at discerning how good you are mining Monero. Okay, so you look at, if you're going to use the Xbox to mine Monero, that's about all you can say about the teraflops advantage until we see actual games. Oh my God, it's so annoying. I'm sorry. Your edit seems pretty simple. Why so long to render? Well, for the podcast, though, it's still 2 hours long, and you've got that complex fire effect in the background, and so that's why. Let me see here. My grandma has 2 teraflops. Yeah. Have you built a fully water-cooled system? I actually said that earlier. No, I have not. I really have no intention to either. I have the budget to build one. I just don't think it's worth the money for me personally. And mostly it's about the time. It's not worth the time. Tempest Engine is GPU, mostly used for sound. Think about that for a moment. Yeah, there's a few things they could be doing with that. Google user, very good name. Google user writes him, how are the next gen consoles getting this huge performance with barely any thermals like a PC has? Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. RDNA 2 is going to be 50% more efficient. So, right, think about it. If RDNA 2's architecture is 50% more efficient than RDNA 1, and they're using an enhanced version of the 7 nanometer process, that's how. That's how. You know, the Xbox is 52 compute units, but they're clocked really, really low, like probably slightly below the efficiency gain to keep it there. And then the PlayStation 5 is clocked normally, but it's only 36 compute units. It's not that hard to cool. I think both consoles are going to use between 200 and 300 watts, and probably closer to 200. Carbon Cry, can I go to sleep now? I was never trying to keep you up. The stream will probably end in about 10 minutes, though. I never go to 2 hours because otherwise it messes with the YouTube servers hate videos that are that long. Does the LG C9 have low? It doesn't need it, right? It doesn't need the streaming light flashing thing. OLED doesn't refresh the screen like a TN panel does. It's an entirely different technology. There's no ghosting. There's none of the crap you got to worry about on a TN panel. If you're a professional gamer, you should be begging OLED to come to more monitors. Do you play RPGs? I used to play Dungeons and Dragons a lot. I still try to every now and then. MMORPGs? Nah, I've never really liked MMOs. I just never have. Well, I don't get it. It's 2 a.m. where you are. I need to end it. Guys, you can just watch the rest later. Then say TN's dead. I just said it's inferior. It's still much cheaper to produce. Eddie Del Castillo, do you feel water cooling is worth it at this point? I've said all-in-one liquid coolers. Totally. Just do your research because some of them are far worse than others. And I mean, water cooling, a custom loop's never been worth it in price performance. Guys, come on. But it is fun, especially if you overclock. Our PS5s is selling at an extreme loss. Well, we don't know the final price of either console yet, but when I've looked at bill of materials, I got to like $420 to make it. Now they said 470, but it's like, okay, so then they're making money if they sell it for 500, losing 20 bucks at 450. You guys called that an extreme loss? The PS3 was sold at like a $200 loss. So was the Xbox 360. I don't think they're ever going to do that again, by the way. But I mean, it's not an extreme loss if they sell it for even well, you could almost say extreme if it was sold for 400, but it'd still be less of a loss than the PS3. You're wrong, Al. The PS5 will run both at the max speeds at the same time. No developer said they have any problem running it at max speed at the same time, and I'm so sick of this bullshit. Mark Cerny directly said that if you reduce power by 10%, you reduce clock speeds. I forgot what it was, by like 1 or 3%. So that, and you're not reducing GDR6 bandwidth. So it's like the clock speed thing is just literally they want to account for the fact that it might run at 1% to 5% lower clocks late in the generation in a compact design. This is not something where it's going to be like some fluctuating thing. Everyone I've talked to says most of the time it's running locked 2.23 gigahertz, and it could even run higher if they wanted it to, but it's locked down. And then they have the CPU running full 3.5. This is, again, ridiculous. Although, to be fair, Sony's messaging was dumb as shit, so that's a lot of that Sony's fault. I'm not worried about it sustaining clock speeds, though. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Roy Stoltzer, like, there's no way they would make a console that just like, yeah, they wouldn't do that. Their messaging is just terrible. Roy Stoltzner writes in and says, CLC graphics cards, low volume tax. Thoughts? I don't know what that means. CLC graphics cards, closed loop cooling graphics cards, low volume tax. Yeah, I mean, there's some of that. And they also probably have more warranty problems. I just still think they're marked up too much. Well, and right, so that explains the Fury X, right? The Fury X was $650, which wasn't unreasonable for the performance, even though it was liquid cooled. But the fact that they made so many of them meant they didn't have to mark it up that much. So yeah, that's a good point. I guess I think they should just make the liquid cooled versions more higher volume more often and keep the price more reasonable. A lot of the balance between the two at the clock speeds on the PlayStation is about uniform cooling. And if there is any 3D stacking, that's something they got to worry about, right? Have you heard anything about RDNA 3? Well, I just said it. I mean, there's not much to say. RDNA 3 is most likely 5 nanometer. I suspect it will bring some new. Yeah, I don't know anything specific. That's all I can really say. And it sounds like you'll have enhanced variable rate shading, enhanced VR capabilities, and a few other things that are in both the Xbox and PlayStation. Things that they're putting in the consoles before they're putting in their desktop cards. I don't know anything besides that. You know, it's supposed to be 50% more efficient than even RDNA 2 is, right? So it should be another 50% performance boost at least. Preston Morton, I recognize that name. Discord member, I'm leaning towards a 3950X, or should I wait for Zen 3? I just want to have cutting edge for gaming and a little streaming for a few years, and I will pair it with Big Navi unless it's over. I don't know what you have right now, Morton. If you have a decent gaming chip, which type it now if you want to tell me. I would highly recommend waiting for Zen 3, right? Or Matisse 2 or something, unless you're going to use the 3950X for work right now. A low frame rate compensation. I may have misread your previous question, Mustache Boy. Well, yeah, I really don't have much to say about low frame rate compensation. Honestly, I really don't. It's not something I've really looked into. My monitor's old. Honestly, guys, I'm still using a monitor that would almost be budget by today's standards. It wasn't at the time, but it is now. I really don't have much to say about it. Do I think Big Navi will have a liquid cooled card? I think so. Yes. I don't have any information that it will, but it sounds like the very top model, they're going to overclock like crazy to like 350 or more watts so that they can try to keep the performance crown or at least get close to NVIDIA's top card. It might not be as efficient, but it sounds like AMD does not care with their top graphics card, that they just want to get close to the 3080 Ti so that they can make NVIDIA not look that high in performance. Let's see. BC Master Kush. Okay. Interesting name. Do you think I already answered that one. No, nothing new on anything about Ampere. I haven't really even asked for follow-up information, to be honest. I probably will within a month, but I imagine we'll start hearing more about Ampere from other people in about a month as well. Use Ryzen 2600 with a 580. Okay. Have another beer. All right, I'll have one more drink. But I'm turning it off in 10 minutes. All right, guys. As I say, this ends before what would it be then? This will end before 7:21. This will end in about 8 minutes to make sure the server doesn't get messed with, because if I go over 2 hours, it screws everything up. Is there another tip, or is that still the old one? I just want to kind of, yeah, okay. So no, I haven't missed anything, I don't think. All right, so this is your last chance for any tip questions. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know much else to say. It's been an insane May. I mean, my God, I'm over 50,000 subscribers. Oh, here we go. JD Gamer. How likely is it that either or both of the next-gen consoles get a late cycle spec bump? Oh, almost 100%, I think, right? I do like the second part of your question a lot more, though. What would I change in the consoles? Let me write that down. So here's the caveat I need to say right out of the gate. When it comes to my suggestions for how I would change the consoles, I'm not inside Microsoft or Sony. I don't know what they know about the trials and tribulations they need to go through to make 10 million consoles a year, right? The supply chain problems, especially with COVID. So keep that in mind. But I do see major weaknesses in both consoles. I know for a fact that the PlayStation 5 was originally intended to have around 18 gigabit per second GDR6. When I see 14 gigabit per second, to me, that looks like cost cutting and like they're hedging their bets for their supply chain, since that's the most popularly manufactured GDR6 chip. They just want to make sure this publicly highly available chip, they only need 8 of them because each one's 2 gigabytes. They can just put that in the console and make sure they can make enough of them, right? But I think that's somewhat of a mistake. It was originally intended to have a bit more bandwidth. And so this tells me it's not going to be super expensive. I also heard it was originally going to be like 1.6 terabytes. So I think it was originally intended to be a 1.6 terabyte console with 18 gigabit per second memory, maybe even 32 gigabytes, probably not. But it was going to be like 550, 600 bucks. And they've decided, due to the recession, they want to make it like a $400, $450 console. That's what I think is going on with Sony. I don't know how much more it would cost, but I think it would be better to go back up to 18 gigabits per second. That would give them a bandwidth advantage, a huge one, actually, due to the segmented memory in the Xbox Series X. Long term, you would have a more powerful console. That's my advice to Sony. I don't think the storage is an issue. 800 gigabytes is plenty. I don't actually get these ridiculous arguments. You don't need to install 100 games at once. You can install like 7 and you're fine. I don't honestly get that argument. And they might not even need to use 100 gigabytes for suspending games because of how fast they have multiple controllers. They might not even need to suspend games. They might just be able to instantly stream it anyways without needing to have the game switching suspend function. So it's definitely enough storage. I really just think the bandwidth should be faster. For the Xbox, I know that was originally intended to be at least 22 gigabytes. That 6 gigabyte segment in the Xbox was meant to be 12. And they cheaped out. Again, I think because of the recession, there were rumors from within Sony that they thought Microsoft was going to make a $600 console. And I think Sony was like, oh, if they do that, we win. And then Microsoft cut out about 30 to 60 bucks from the bill of materials by switching to a 6 gigabyte segment. I think that's a mistake. I know they probably think they can get by with 6 gigabytes of system RAM. I don't honestly know that they will be able to because their SSD is not as fast. It doesn't have as many controllers, and they're gonna have to swap. There's almost no next gen game in 2021 that's not going to have to pull from that 10 gigabyte segment for system memory, and that's an effective bandwidth nerf for their graphics card that should have more bandwidth, in my opinion. So that's my advice. I don't even think it needs to be faster. I think that 6 gigabyte segment in the Xbox should be 12 and maybe even be slower. And I think if they could add more bandwidth to the main 10 gigabyte segment, they should. That's my advice for both Sony and Microsoft. I think they both did some cost cutting though. And in terms of like mid-gen cycle refreshes, I mean, I think it's pretty simple what you're going to see. A 72 compute unit PlayStation 5 Pro in like 4 years or 3 years or whatever that has, I don't know how much, whatever. And then, yeah, they'll probably go to 32 gigabytes and double the storage. And it'll probably, they'll market it as having some games in 8K. Once 8K TVs are more prevalent in a few years, Microsoft will probably do the same thing. I don't know what they'll bump the specs up to with the Xbox, but, probably similar stuff. Probably like 80 compute units, clocked at 2.2 gigahertz with 2 terabytes. Probably Microsoft will go to a faster default SSD in their refresh to keep up with the PlayStation 5s. That's what I expect. Not much else to say besides that. All right, let me go. I know there was another tip I thought. Okay. KMP writes in, seeing Ampere's AI resolution abilities, would future AAA games be nearing mobile phones? I mean, with how powerful APUs are getting, I honestly can see. I've said this. I've done several videos. What was that? The Intel AMD APU gaming revolution of 2021. That video that did pretty well. I mean, I think next year, that's why I'm waiting to upgrade my laptop. You're going to see portable PC gaming devices that are, of course, not as strong as the next gen consoles, but will come out about a year after the next gen consoles and maybe be half as powerful. That's good enough, to run the same games that were in 4K on the consoles in 1080p. Like a Zen 4 APU late next year, hopefully, or something, even Zen 3 Plus APU if it has 24 compute units. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, guys. With DDR5, I really think you could end up playing next-gen console games in like a portable PC late next year. And that's just going to be incredible. And at that point, you got to ask what you really need anymore, because now you can bring everything with you like it's a Switch, but it's a AAA game. Yeah, I forget the AI. I just think that's going to happen either way. All right, and I've answered all questions. I'll give it another minute. He says PS5 is peasant 30 frames per second. You mean like 30 frames per second Valhalla on Xbox Series X? Yeah, guys, all games should be 60 hertz next gen, except for walking simulators. Who really cares if that's 30 hertz? But we already know, supposedly, Valhalla's 30 hertz on Xbox Series X. So there's your peasant console as well. Frickin' fanboys. Although I want to be clear, I think it's ridiculous if Valhalla actually ends up being 30 frames per second. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse. They can run that game at 60 frames on an Xbox. Are you kidding me? That's an insane choice. And if I was Microsoft, I'd be trying to force them to be 60 frames. That's I mean, I don't care if it runs at high settings or medium settings, even instead of ultra. Run it at 60. I mean, come on. It's really annoying. Oh, do you think there will be X670 boards? I don't know. I've heard they worked on it, and I've also heard it's just going to be X570. I really don't know for sure. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Good Meme writes in, and he says, it's just shit devs that can't get their game to run at 60 frames. I mean, that's probably true. Honestly, I hate to say it. But if Valhalla is running 30 frames on Xbox, it's probably because the game just doesn't run well, right? Like, it's probably not going to, you're probably going to need a 3080 Ti to run at 60 frames on PC anyways, which is, again, unacceptable. Unacceptable programming. But what are you going to do? New Sony handheld? I doubt it. Thoughts on Adored's new vid? He basically came to the same conclusion I did about Ampere with different information and RDNA 2. I thought it was funny how people like show me that adored RDNA 2 video, and it's like, sounds like he thinks it's going to be really powerful too, but not beat Ampere. I would say the same thing. However, I do think AMD will actually beat the 3080 and come close to the 3080 Ti, but the Titan will probably still have the performance lead. Thoughts on M2 drives for PS5? Not that much. Rumors have it xCloud will be integrated into both Game Pass and the Game Suspend feature. No, they're not going to use the cloud to make the console stronger. That doesn't work. They already tried with Xbox One X. I'm sorry, I just no, like it's not going to work. My opinion. I'll admit if I'm wrong, but all right, that's it, guys. We are at the 2-hour mark. I've got to end this. I hope you enjoyed it. I kind of rushed it out because I thought it was the perfect day. New Broken Silicon's coming out. You can ask me questions on there if you're a patron. All right, have a good week, everybody.